And can everybody hear me okay and see the screen okay? I haven't heard a no, so I'm going to move forward then. I promise course tonight is going to be time well spent. We're going to discuss the cost of college, how to reduce your cost, and how to pay for the portion that's left over. And we're here to share insider secrets plus tips and strategies on saving on and not just for the cost of college. So you probably, hold on one second. There we go. So you're wondering why you should listen to us? Well, we're considered a leading expert in planning, preparing, and paying for college. And we've helped thousands of families to save thousands of dollars on the cost of college. Since January 2008, we've presented over 300 free educational workshops, educating families on how to navigate through the maze of college planning without financial, emotional, or mental stress. And who are we? First, there's George Gonzalez. He had a prior commitment, so he wasn't able to make it. But he's a focused innovator, results-generating sales professional with flawless track record and strong relationships in the same industry and geographical area for the last 26 years. He's worked with Fortune 500 companies most of his career and has been featured in several publications, radio, internet, TV shows. His focus is to help you increase your knowledge to protect and grow your wealth while helping you reduce your tax liability with comprehensive and reliable solutions for college and retirement savings. And Ken, he is here. Ken?
Hi, good evening, everybody, and it's a pleasure to have you here with us this evening. My background is in money also. I'm an accountant. I'm a CPA, not practicing on a daily basis these days, as I jumped into the retirement and wealth arena a few years ago, helping people navigate the complexities of our financial world and helping prepare them for retirement. When I had the opportunity to start this business a couple of years ago, it made a lot of sense to me because at the end of the day, we feel that retirement planning and college planning go hand in hand. Unfortunately, a lot of people's plan to pay for college is to raid their retirement funds. And we think there's a better way. In fact, we know there's a better way. So when we talk to people about college planning, yes, we work with the students, as you're going to learn a little bit about as Barbara does the presentation tonight. And we work, excuse me, in the financial aid arena, filling out forms, but also strategizing where to put your money to stay off the financial aid radar. But at the same time, these strategies we're using are very often directly linked to retirement as well, because what we do to help you plan to pay for college and preserve your money and keep it liquid and reduce taxes is identical or not identical, but very closely aligned to what we do when we help people prepare for retirement. And these days, the average adult that we work with, the average parent, is not in their 30s anymore. They've been having children later. So I'm guessing that people on our seminar tonight, and as with the others we've seen who have high school kids, are very often in their mid to late 40s, and often we're working with people in their mid and sometimes even late 50s. So retirement becomes a part of the picture and a very important part of the picture. There are some surprises coming down the road. We all know that taxes are only going to go in one direction, that's up. But there's other surprises that we help you pay for and plan for. So that's sort of my story. What I do now with the college planning business with Green Education is very personal to me, because 15 years ago, when my kids went to college, my son in particular, I allude to, I messed up the process really badly. I won't get into the details because it's too painful for me to think about, but I left a lot of dollars on the table of financial aid that I would have been entitled to. And I wasn't knowledgeable about this at that point. So it's deeply personal to me that I help people not do what I did. Anyway, you're going to hear a wonderful presentation from Barbara now. You'll learn a lot. Pay attention, take some notes. We'll be here to answer questions at the end as well.
And I'm Barbara Miller, and I'm an expert in admissions and student positioning. I've helped thousands of families save tens of thousands of dollars on the cost of college and guide their student to their dream fit school. And I've worked, as I said, in presenting over 300 free educational workshops on how to navigate through the maze of college planning. While I've not previously worked in the education arena, I have spent over 35 years in recruiting and human resources. And let me just point out that getting noticed by colleges is parallel to getting noticed by a corporation. Basically, you're competing for a spot, and they are, of course, looking for the candidate that's the best fit for that spot. I provide my expertise with career research and selection, student positioning and promotion, test prep, school selection, and step-by-step on how to create resumes, recommendations, admissions, essays, and then filling out the applications. So now, why are you here? Well, you're here because no one's giving you the entire picture, both good and bad, regarding what college is going to cost you and how to put together a plan to pay for it. You want your students choosing the right school for the right reasons at the right price. And that's what we do. The information tonight is going to be general in nature, seeing that everyone's personal financial situation is complex and very different. But due to this, we are going to offer a free initial consultation where we'll take 45, 60 minutes of one-on-one time with you to determine if we can provide you with a significant positive outcome. Now, during this time, initial evaluation, we'll discuss your student, where you currently are in the process, what your goals, objectives, and more importantly, what your obstacles are. After all, college is a huge investment, and the process is complex with several hidden steps and obstacles along the way. And when we would get to the end of our conversation, you'll be able to determine if we can make a significant positive impact for you. Unfortunately, we can't help everyone. So it's understandable that we're selective with who we choose to work with. Our goal is to help you achieve a great outcome for your student and your finances. This is also one of the reasons that our other goal is to educate the community through our community outreach program. We're trying to do these workshops and educate people as much as humanly possible. So if you enjoyed the information and you're part of a company, a group, organization, PTA, PTO, band membership, anything where you've got a group of people and you want us to come out, bring that to our attention. We'll arrange that for you as well. Okay, so let's take a minute to review some paperwork. I am going to put into the notes. I have added our workshop notes. So this is a place where you can actually, you can download it. It's a fillable form, or you can download it and print it. And this is where I've put spots where you can write in answers and take notes for tonight, or you just might want to have a notepad and pen. You will want to at least have a notepad or pen because I am going to give you a lot of information. Also, we always like to know how we did. So once the workshop ends, you're going to be directed to a short survey. Please complete it with your thoughts, your opinions, and suggestions. And if you are interested in an initial evaluation, there's a spot where you can put that in there too. Okay, so we've got a lot of information to cover. At the end of the workshop, as Ken mentioned, we will have a question and answer session for those that have additional questions. We're also going to provide you, as I said, we also just provided you with a document where you can take notes, and I'll make sure to let you know the most important things to write down. So today's agenda is going to be the current college cost landscape, covering the basics, costly mistakes to avoid, tips for reducing college costs, and the college funding retirement savings dilemma. So let's start by discussing the current college cost landscape. So as you can see, the current cost for 4 years at an in-state public university is about $84,000 minimum. And the cost for 4 years at an elite private university can reach well over $320,000. And that's with the cost of attendance projected to increase about 5% each and every year. And when you take into account that only 43.7% of freshmen graduate within 4 years, the figures are going to skyrocket because you've got year 5 and 6 or whatever to pay for. And if your student is interested in out-of-state public university, well, you can expect the cost to be approximately $45,000 to $60,000 per year. And these schools are aware that they're popular and don't need to offer scholarships or money to entice students to apply or attend. And they do not give any need-based aid for out-of-state students. And this is all for one child. So the brutal truth about college costs and their impacts on you and families, as you've just seen, the average cost for a four-year public university is about $80,000, private college, 300,000+. That's the four-year average. Only about 60% of freshmen actually graduate in 6 years or less. And today, a family can easily exceed college costs of $250,000, and that's for one child. And according to a recent Sallie Mae report, 60% of families said that they were not saving because they felt they don't have enough money. So, of course, to bridge the gap of college costs and available resources, families are taking on more and more student loan debt. Student loan debt in this country has passed credit card debt. It's actually now double credit card debt. So credit card debt is at $882 billion, and student loan debt is $1.9 trillion. So as you can see, that's quite a bit of money there. But don't lose hope. There is good news. Most people think, and most professional advisors included, that college planning is just saving for college. In fact, good college planning is all about saving on the cost of college. And when it comes to college planning, while we're consistent in strategies to use, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Your family is going to use a unique combination and blend of strategies. But if you know the ins and outs of the process and better understand it, then you can actually work within that framework. You can also turn the process around so that you manage it and you can take advantage of a process as opposed to the process taking advantage of you. So here's what you're going to need to know in advance. First of all, how the SAI is calculated. Now, you probably have not heard that. That's the Student Aid Index that's going to be taking over next year for the expected family contributions. You also need to know what planning strategies are available to implement that are both prudent, meaning good for retirement planning, and at the same time can increase your financial aid eligibility, meaning that the funds are not included in the financial aid formula. And of course, you want to determine ahead of time what forms are required by the schools, whether it be the FAFSA, the CSS profile, the non-custodial profile, institutional financial aid applications, verification forms, tax documents, and additional forms. And it's really important to note here, financial aid applications are going to base your student aid index on the prior year. So what does that mean? That means that the financial aid application for 2024, that's right, sophomores, are going to be based on your income information from this year, 2022. This is why we typically recommend that you start 4 to 5 years prior to your student's base year, which is their senior year, in order to have time to complete the analysis and develop a plan. Okay, so you must plan your financial aid before filing financial aid forms. And as I said, we recommend at least 4 to 5 years before the base years, which is your student's incoming college freshman year. Why so early, you might ask? Well, in reality, even that's considered late stage college planning. You should have started developing to pay for college as soon after your child is born. The longer we have to plan, the less of a commitment you need to make per year, so that when student does finally start exploring colleges, the conversation is about academics and not economics. When it comes to college planning, we break it down into 3 very critical components. We're going to start with what we call analysis and planning. This is basically what that is where we're going to take a look at your finance, your family can maximize the financial aid system, determine what course of action it would be in terms of paying for it, understanding how all those pieces come together, and obviously determine what schools have the most money and where the money is coming from. The next step is to prepare your students, because that's essentially why we're here. Putting the student in the best position to get admitted, get accepted, go through the process, whether it's SAT, ACT planning, essay preparation and submission, application preparation and submission, college selection, career preps, major selection, all the key elements of getting the student ready to be admitted for college. And then your student has positioned themselves properly. You need to concern yourself with the financial aid forms, which can be a little convoluted. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of work to be done. But if we put all of these three pieces together, we can come up with a good solid plan on how to be prepared, how to maximize financial aid, and how to have a successful college education, which leads to a fulfilling career out in the real world. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the basics that you need to know. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is the simplified version of the current student financial aid delivery system. And you can see how complex and confusing it is. Now, how many of you feel that you can navigate this? Now, I feel your pain, so you don't have to raise your hands if you can't. Aid comes from several different avenues. So unless you are in the military, veterans benefits, of course, are not available to you. And unless your employer offers paid benefits for dependents, that's not going to be available to you. Everything else is available to you, from federal grants to federal loans, state programs, spoiler alert, Bright Futures, federal institutional money that the colleges give you, and private scholarships. So that right there, usually about $236 billion in student aid each and every year. That aid is split up into two types of aid. One is called merit aid. Now, this comes from the admissions department, and you're typically notified at the same time that your student receives the school decision. And it's based on how your student stands out among other students. It's free money, never has to get paid back. The second is need-based aid. This comes from the financial aid department, consists of grants, which are free, low to zero interest loans, to work study, whatever fancy names are used. It's either free money, it's a loan, or it's something you have to work off. Let's talk a little bit about merit aid. Merit aid comes, as I said, from the admissions office. It's based on how your student stands out among other applicants in the form of scholarships. So I want to say that again, it's how your student stands out among other applicants. That's important to know, because you could have a fantastic student, but depending on where they apply, if all the other students are on the same level, in order to get merit aid, your student has to be above them. Schools have scholarships from a few different sources. Academic scholarships, that's based on GPA, transcripts, test scores, things like that. Talent scholarships, based on your talent or ability in a specific sport. Artistic talent, based on a portfolio or a performance or audition. And achievement scholarships, based on anything from community service, leadership roles, earning an IB or ACE diploma. Schools also have endowment scholarships, which are donated from outside sources, and departmental scholarships, which are scholarships for just a specific department or school within the college. Although this is somewhat predictable, it's not guaranteed, as it's based on how your student outshines other applicants. Since we don't know the other applicants' GPA, test scores, resumes, recommendations, essays, honors, all that, it's impossible to say definitively that a student will receive merit aid. Reason we don't include Bright Futures when determining our out-of-pocket costs is because it's not guaranteed either. Bright Futures, which many of you are depending on, also almost had major cuts and changes this past year. One of them being that your student's Bright Future scholarship would be reduced by the number of AP, IB, ACE dual enrollment credits your student earned. Of course, we devoted a significant amount of time and effort to prevent this, but you need to be aware that this may not be around when your student's going to attend college. This is voted on every year and can end or change at any time. We can, however, determine need-based aid. So let's start with some key terms. What you see before you is our basic formula for financial aid. And I'm going to speak in acronyms, or as I like to say, alphabet soup. So ready? We're going to write this down. Here's the big formula. Cost of attendance, that's called COA. This is the retail sticker price. So each year, every school is going to supply the Department of Education with their published rate. That's the cost of attendance. It covers hard costs and soft costs. Hard costs are those that you're billed for typically twice a year, your tuition and fees, dorm, meal plan, health insurance. And I include health insurance because the school will charge you for that if you don't show that your student is on your health insurance plan. Soft costs are variable costs, such as books and supplies, transportation, and miscellaneous. This is the worst case scenario. Now, we do not decide on what schools will be affordable based on the cost of attendance. And relax, I'm going to show you how to calculate what your cost will be. That's the number that you need to know. So that number is your student aid index, which you will hear as the term SAI. For anyone that follows the news, this was formerly called the Expected Family Contribution, or EFC. It's now going to be your student aid index, or SAI. So that's what you want to write down. SAI takes into account parents' income and assets, students' income and assets, rolls it in a proprietary formula, similar to your FICO score for your credit, calculates a number that they believe is the amount of money that you as a family can afford to invest annually in education for that student. So anybody here already know their EFC? Okay. So your one thing you're on your to-do list after this workshop, Google EFC. I guarantee you'll have 100 sites come up in less than a second. Pick like the first 2 or 3. Either student, I think federal student aid's a good one, or College Board. Those are the 2 I recommend. Okay, so you subtract from the cost of your student aid index from the cost of attendance, and the difference between the 2 is your financial need. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the student aid index. I'm going to interject for a second here. On December 21st, 2020, Congress passed the FAFSA Simplification Act. This did away with the expected family contribution and replaced it with the Student Aid Index, or SAI. Colleges are going to use that to determine your eligibility for financial aid, and the SAI is the minimum you're expected to contribute towards college costs. Here's an important fact. They do not take into account any debt, such as your bills, car payments, credit card debt, taxes you may owe, none of that. They also do not consider if you have more than one student in college anymore. Here's some of the significant changes to the financial aid formula. Your first allowance is called your income protection allowance. So the Department of Education allows a portion of your income to be exempt from the financial aid formula. The parental income protection allowance will increase. This partially compensates for the fact that the formula no longer makes allowances for having more than one student in college. Your assets, though, your assets will take a double hit. The parent asset protection allowance will decrease, meaning that more of your assets will be assessed in the student aid index. And that assessment will increase from 5.6% to more than double at 12%. The student income protection allowance will increase from $64.20 to $94.10. Little bit of good news. Keep in mind, though, that any money that your student earns over the $94.10 will be assessed at 50%. And that's whether the student is dependent or independent. This is partially as a result of some wealthy families emancipating their student so they would qualify for financial aid. And the student assessment, asset assessment, that's going to remain at 20%. So that means any money that's in your student's name, they're going to want 20% of that each and every year. Okay, so as you can see, you may be penalized for saving. So the Department of Education assumes any assets you have outside of your retirement plans must be for expenditures such as college. 12% of your investments are going to count towards your student aid index. Investments include real estate, not necessarily the home in which you live, rental property, trust funds, UTMA and UGMA accounts, money market funds, mutual funds, certificates of deposit, stocks, bonds, other securities, etc. Investments also include qualified educational benefits or educational savings accounts. For example, your 529 plans or your Florida prepaid plans. Yes, this includes 529 plans and Florida prepaid plans. I know it's tax for anyone, you all know it's a 529 plan, it's a tax-free college savings plan where any of the growth in the plan is completely tax-free. And how does that sound? I mean, let's face it, the federal government says, I've got this really great plan for you. Save money for college like a good parent. You can have that money tax-free on the gain and everybody wins. And parents go, yay, we love it. But that's the IRS's rules, not the colleges, or the Department of Education, because when you go to stand in line to apply for financial aid, what does the Department of Education say about your 529 plan? Well, let's pretend you have two students, you have $50,000 for each. So 12% of the 529 plan will count towards your expected contribution, costing you $12,000 a year in lost financial aid. So this is one of those situations where understanding how they come about with their formula and calculating how it affects your SAI is going to benefit you. I'm going to take it a step further. Many of the private schools are going to move that asset, because it's their money, their rolls, out of the parent's name and into the child's name. Why do they do that? Well, who's the 529 plan for? The student's the beneficiary of the asset, right? So the college says, no, I don't care what the Department of Education says. That's an asset for the student to go to college. The formula says students' assets are calculated at 20%. And that's not all. Let's look at the plan itself. So the good 529 plans provide you tax deferred growth. And if the stock market is doing well, you have unlimited upside potential. You can contribute up to $418,000 per beneficiary, which is well above the $320,000 for an undergraduate study at the top school. And if you can, it can be used for graduate, medical, and law school. So if you don't use all of it during undergrad, you can use it for grad school. The bad, though, is you can only make changes once a year. So if you're invested in a product that goes down, there's nothing you can do until your anniversary. And if it hasn't come back up at your anniversary, there's not a whole lot you can do. Plus, 529 plans can only be used after all other options, such as merit aid or grants or tax credits, or your Florida prepaid. It's the last thing that you can use. The ugly, well, obviously, if the stock market does poorly, you can have unlimited downside potential. And as I said, 529 plans are counted against you in the financial aid formula at 12%. So unless your plan's made more than 12%, not only have you not necessarily raised your student aid index, but you lost money. Plus, educational savings plans may charge an enrollment application fee, annual account maintenance fees, ongoing program management fees, asset management fees, along with tax penalties if the disbursements are incorrectly used. Now, before you walk out of here tonight and go to the bank tomorrow and rip out all your 529 plans, remember that it's circumstantial. It's based on your family circumstances. If you have a question about 529 plans and how this is affecting you and what you should do, don't hesitate to schedule an initial consultation so we can chat with you about it. Okay. Any of you have Florida prepaid plans? It's okay. I know that now that I've beat up the 529 plan, let me tell you, this may be one of the best return on investments that you have. And if you paid for housing too, you are way ahead. Keep in mind though, Florida prepaid only covers part of the bill. And that's for in-state public universities. There's still the cost of housing, meal plans, books and supplies, miscellaneous costs, which all of these are about 65 to 75% of the bill. Keep in mind though, that your Florida prepaid is an investment. As an investment, it is going to be assessed at 12% towards your expected contribution. But a little bit of good news, as an investment, it is not a state plan. So you can use the value at any school, public or private, in-state or out-of-state. Now, if you ask another college that's out of state if they accept Florida prepaid, they don't know. They might tell you no. Doesn't matter. Florida prepaid, they're going to write a check and send it to the school. Ask the schools if they'll accept a check. Okay, now we discussed a little bit what does not count towards your expected, or what does count towards your expected contribution. You should know that there are assets that are not counted towards your expected contribution. And you want to familiarize yourself with strategies that can effectively lower your student aid index. This is going to require a deep dive into your finances, looking at monthly cash flow and budget, tax capacity, lifestyle, and your future plans. After analysis, you need to review which strategies are applicable to your specific circumstances, such as reallocating the funds to an asset that's not assessed by the Department of Education, retirement accounts, permanent life insurance, annuities, just to name a few. And they're typically in your safe zone as opposed to your risk zone. Retirement accounts. So just can't label a savings account as a retirement account and exclude it from the assessment. The law is very specific about what can be considered an excluded asset. So if that's something you want to discuss, that might be a reason to come talk to us. I always like to have a little bit of fun. So let's talk about personal items. Need a new car, bathroom renovation? This is the time to buy that large screen home theater system or things you need to buy anyways. Why? Well, it's going to lower your cash and savings, which will lower your student aid index. And of course, as I mentioned, that you've calculated your student aid index, completed a full analysis of your finances, you need to determine if it makes sense to apply the appropriate strategies to lower your student aid index. Keep in mind, any changes to the location of your funds is going to create a taxable event and artificially inflate your adjusted gross income, which will lower your financial need. This is why we strongly recommend that your plan is in place by the time your students are freshmen. Okay, so now that you have your SA, your student aid index, we've just done a complete analysis. We've done a little bit of strategies and repositioning, and we've lowered your student aid index. Next step is actually to price out some schools. Because here's the thing, so let's imagine you're a family with $100,000 total income, plus $100,000 in assets, plus Florida prepaid. Although your initial student aid index is about 25,000, you employ some strategies, lower your student aid index to 15,000. So now you have an established need above 15,000. It doesn't mean that you're getting anything. Schools are not required to cover your need. So there's three critical questions that you have to know the answers to. The first question, what percentage of need does that school offer? And yes, this is one of the ones you'll want to write down. So what percentage of need does that school offer? Now, ideally, we're looking for a school that's offering 100% of need, or close to that. But as you can see from this example, although we have a financial need of like close to $8,500, the school does not meet all your need, leaving some unmet need. And who pays that? Well, you do. So aid doesn't have to all be gift aid either. Some schools are going to factor in student loans and even Parent Plus loan. So here's your second question. Ready? Your second question you need to ask is, what is the breakdown between gift and self-help? Self-help aid includes work study and loans, whether they are Perkins loans, student direct loans, or Parent Plus loans. So this, you can see the school gives 60%. But let's use an example. If one school gives 60% gift and 40% self-help, and another school has 75% gift, 25% self-help, you could end up paying significantly less in the second school compared to the first one. Does that make sense? Okay, so your real cost or out-of-pocket cost is the sum of your student aid index, 15,000, your unmet need of 4,000, and your self-help of 1,765. So your total need, the total cost is going to be 20,838. Spoiler alert, for these examples, you notice we are not including any possible state merit aid, such as Bright Futures, or any institutional merit aid, because as we previously said, neither's guaranteed. We're only looking at need-based aid. Okay. Now the other school we're going to look at is a private college, and its cost of attendance is almost triple that of the public university example. We're going to do the same thing though. We're going to subtract the student aid index, and we come up with a financial need, which naturally, due to the difference in cost from the public university, is much higher. But look what happens when you see the financial aid package. The entire financial need is met. So there is no gap to add to your cost to you is your student aid index of 15,000. Ready for this? Furthermore, the private school gives 97% gift aid and only 3% self-help. As it turns out, because of the big difference in the ability of the private school to meet your financial need, the school that appeared to be out of reach for your family is in fact going to cost you less out of pocket, almost $4,000 less. How come? So why do private schools give more money? So private schools, as well as public schools, they have endowments. Some endowments are larger than others, and some allow for more of it to be used for financial aid. Public schools typically use their endowment for athletic scholarships. Private schools use their endowments to offer more money to the students they want, and they can use more of it in a bidding war. Because private schools are using their endowment dollars for financial aid because it's their money and not the states or federal government's monies. They don't have to follow the same financial aid rules. They can give the money to whomever they want, and they tend to give it to the most, to the better students. But they also have a tremendous flexibility to match other colleges' financial aid offers. So let's look at an actual example of a student. This is one of my students that actually was accepted to every school where she applied because she chose the right schools for the right reasons. As you can see, came out at the right price. So Emory University actually costs less to the family than Florida State University. Remember, we said 3 questions, right? Okay, so the third question you have to ask is, what's the average length of time to graduate for that school? So our goal is we want your student graduating successful and supporting themselves in about 4 years. But according to the Department of Education, completing the program within 150% of the published time for the program is considered on time. Yeah, that's 6 years. The average public school graduation rate is 5.8% or 5.8 years. And the average private school graduation rate is 4.2 years. So that means that a private school that may be a little bit more expensive upfront on an annual basis may still end up being cheaper option in the long run because your student will spend less time there. And there's a number of different variables for why your student might take more than 4 years to graduate, and we're going to go over some of those. So for example, impacted classes. There's a number of, you can probably figure out these are your classes that your students having a hard time to get into. They're called your general education classes. They fill up so quickly that your student sometimes has to wait a term and sometimes even till the next year before there's even availability. Changing your majors. A student changes their majors midway. That's because not all majors are going to require the same core prerequisite classes. So this is going to add more time to getting out of college. Not being lack of preparation. So maybe your student didn't do as much as they possibly could in terms of AP, ACE, dual enrollment classes, or you didn't strategically understand the impact it could have on shortening the amount of time they could spend in college. And taking too few credits. So colleges only require that you take 12 credits per semester to be considered full-time. There are even some colleges, NYU, that suggest or recommend that. So let's do the math. Your typical bachelor degree requires 120 credits, which is 30 per year and 15 per semester. 12 credits per semester is 24 credits per year. At that pace, it takes 5 years to graduate. That's an additional $21,000 to $80,000 in costs. All of these things can add up to the cost more money for the family. Like I said, sometimes you're going to get need-based financial aid, and a lot of families are eligible for that. But there are things your student can do that also might reduce the amount of time in school, which in turn saves money for school. So the first part is, we call it student positioning. So it all starts with your student in their freshman year. And that's right, their freshman year, students should learn how to develop a few good habits, namely study skills, time management, reading comprehension, and test taking. These are critical, not just for the success in high school, but developing these good habits will carry over into college, which is going to help your student excel even more. Students should be exploring careers. Your students should match careers that fit their personality traits, their natural attributes, their work importance factors, and of course, their passion and interest. They got to actually want to like doing what they're doing. They should make sure that they're engaged in extracurricular activities that align with their passions or interests or complement them. Extracurricular activities include clubs, organizations, community service, volunteer work, both in school and in the community. It also includes athletics, involvement in a place of worship, if that's relevant, summer programs, internships, and your student should be taking steps to earn a leadership position by their junior year. And they should be improving their test taking skills with DUPTIC programs, PSAT, SAT, and ACT. They should plan ahead to study and practice to take the proper tests to earn college credit. And here's the racket, just so you sidestep a little bit. The PSAT, SAT, AP, and CLEP exams, that's what us old folks took at the college level examination program. They are all administered by College Board, along with the CSS financial aid profile application and the IDOC document service. The College Board no longer offers the SAT subject test, but they run pretty much everything but the ACT. So your student hopefully is already doing it, because merit aid is determined by your student's cumulative GPA over 4 years. Actually over 3 years, because they'll be applying the beginning of their senior year before they have any grades their senior year. ACT or SAT test scores, depth of involvement in extracurricular activities over 4 years, and length and focus of community service over 4 years. We have had we've had the unfortunate task of having to tell a family that their high school senior won't qualify for scholarships because they didn't do the work since freshman year. And unfortunately, I don't have a time machine to go back and get their student on the right path. So let's pretend your student's on the right path, done all this. So now they position themselves to stand out. It's important that they pick the right schools for the right reasons, meaning that obviously the school is an academic fit, has the major, and and the chances of getting into that school are positive, above average, is a social fit. Your student's going to thrive on the campus and at the right price, meaning that you're able, ready, and willing to pay what you'll be expected to pay. And I've been putting them in this order for a reason. The first thing to consider is your ability to pay, obviously. Secondly, are the funds to be used for college going to be there when you need them? Meaning, do they have guaranteed growth and will they be liquid? And third, just because you're able to pay $20,000 to $80,000 per year doesn't mean that you're willing to pay that. So let's talk about some costly mistakes to avoid. First one is not knowing the student aid index formula. If you don't know how financial need is determined and you don't know what the difference between included income and assets and non-reportable income and assets for the purpose of filling out financial aid forms, well, you should know, because where you keep your money matters. You wouldn't buy a house without knowing how much it would cost you. Why would you do that with college? That could cost as much. Second mistake, school choices. If your student applies to fewer than 5 schools, the odds for a good aid package are much less than if they applies to 10 schools. Just so you know, the college knows that it's only competing with a few schools and that your choices are restricted, so they feel that they have the better hand. Now, the opposite applies too. If your student applies to fewer or over 15 to 20 schools, now the school is going to perceive that as a smaller chance of your student selecting their school to attend should they accept your student. So the school may hesitate to offering a spot based on the perceived probability that your student will not attend. Also, it's imperative that you pick schools where your child lies in the top 20% of the incoming freshman class with respect to their GPA and SAT scores to be eligible for merit aid. Keep in mind, there's over 6,500 accredited colleges and universities. Your student will get the same and sometimes a better education at a school that may not have elite status. So it's crucial that you review your student school list before they apply. Mistake number 3, anticipated scholarships. How about this? I have a straight A student or a top athlete or minority, so we'll get a scholarship. First of all, there's a lot of straight A students applying to the same exact schools. And as I previously stated, merit scholarships depend on how your student stands out amongst the other students. Furthermore, if they are a top student, Ivy League universities and many of your elite universities do not offer any scholarships or merit aid at all. As far as athletic scholarships, which are becoming more and more challenging to get, only Division I offers significant scholarships. Division II athletes may get some scholarship money, 10, 15,000, but typically only a few $1,000s, like if it's a public university. Division III athletes, there's offered no scholarships. And in terms of diversity on campus, this is an admissions component. And these days, campuses are becoming more and more more balanced to where this is not offered anymore. Okay, not applying at all. Actually, maybe this should be number 1 mistake. A lot of parents, for lots of reasons, don't bother to apply. But the 2 biggest are because they think they make too much money, or that their students are straight A and are talented or minority students, so they're going to get scholarships. Big mistake. There are a lot of colleges that won't offer merit money unless you file the forms. They will use that merit aid as an incentive to attract a top student to their school that did complete the financial aid forms. By applying for financial aid, you're in essence telling the school that the final cost is a factor in your decision. So if you're not completing the financial aid forms because you think you made too much money, we can't appeal it to see if you can get more money or any money. And if some unfortunate event happens, COVID, the college won't have your information to be in a position to reconsider helping you. And number 5, I've got a guide. Well, if you have a guide that specializes in financial aid and college planning, great. But unfortunately, a lot of times you're talking about a CPA or a financial advisor, and they're experts in tax planning and preparation, but not financial aid planning. For example, a CPA or tax preparer might suggest that you put some or all of your assets in your child's name to save money on taxes. Let me first say this advice is fantastic for reducing taxes, but it'll usually kill most, if not all, of your chances of getting financial aid. Let's face it, if you had a legal issue, you're not going to call the lawyer that represents the other side. If you have a tax situation, you're going to call a CPA and not the IRS. So if you're going to ask for expert advice, make sure they're experts in college planning and funding. And whatever you do not call the college's financial aid department. We'll go over that later. How can I tell, Barbara? Well, any product or investment that is college funding professional will recommend is going to have guaranteed growth. That means it's not affected by the ups and downs, in the stock market. Liquidity, meaning that there's no penalties for withdrawing the funds when needed. And does not count towards your expected contribution. Your advisor should be able to give you an educated estimate on what the investment will be worth at the time you need it, meaning when your student's ready to attend college. Okay, that leads us to the 2 tips for reducing college costs. 1, be a rock star. Now, when the student's at the top of the applicant pool, the odds of getting a discount go up appreciably. And in no way am I dismissing your B student. There's literally thousands of schools where your B student's a top student and will be eligible for merit aid. Again, right schools for the right reasons. Which leads me to expanding your universe. You'll find a lot more options by looking at colleges beyond your typical home radius that you and your student might impose on yourselves, or not one of the top 10 or top 15 schools. More important is looking for colleges that have a career services center with a high percentage of students gainfully employed in their chosen career within 90 days of graduating from college, or attending a top grad school, med school, law school, business school. Let's face it, a degree from a prestigious school isn't worth the paper it's printed on if your student can't get a job. Everyone wants to look at the US News and World Rankings. So how many of here know the criteria that makes up the US News Rankings? Do you want to take a stab at it? It's not what you think. They rank colleges based on graduation and retention rates, undergraduate academic reputation, which is derived from a peer assessment survey. That's right. They ask other colleges to rank colleges. Also, faculty resources. How much notoriety does the faculty member have? Financial resources, meaning how much do they get in endowment contributions, and average alumni giving rate. You know what we didn't hear about? How about professor performance, relevance of curriculum to the degree, career services, return on investments? I mean, don't you want some sort of assurance that after you spend upwards to $320,000 on an undergraduate education, that your student will be gainfully employed in his or her field of study? And next is demonstrated interest. Demonstrating interest is such an important factor in admissions decisions for many colleges these days. Specifically, like American University, Boston University, you heard Ken talk about that earlier. That's an important factor for them, that you have shown interest in their school. Keep in mind, some schools are getting over 50,000 applications. Florida State University this year received almost 74,000 applications for approximately 7,500 spots. So it's imperative that your student takes steps to get noticed. Most schools are going to track all communications with your student. whether it's email or phone calls or online sessions or whatever. And so if they do that, when the application comes in, admissions already knows your student's serious. And last, creating leverage. This term's relative to every college and every student regarding applying to colleges in direct competition with each other. Applying to competing schools increases the chances of a discount or getting a better one if need be. Trust me, the schools talk to each other. They know what students are applying where. Okay, now that we've lowered the amount we have to pay, we have to put together a plan to pay our portion. This is where the college funding retirement savings dilemma comes in. So we know that you love your children, you want them to be successful, you're willing to sacrifice for them financially. And many parents do, even to the point of jeopardizing their retirement nest egg. So at this point, you're probably likely juggling two financial balls, paying for your house and saving for retirement. And we're going to mess things up by throwing in a third ball, saving and paying for college. Will you be able to accomplish all three? What's your plan? Or are you going to be forced to choose and end up like these parents? You need to work on a plan to be able to afford all of these without sacrificing any of them. And we have to make sure that you don't put your retirement savings at risk. We want you to avoid that at all costs. So take a minute right now and jot down the cost of 4 years of college. Now multiply that by the number of kids you have. Now add your mortgage. Now add how much you're going to need to retire so you'll have enough money to last you your entire retirement. So basically until you're 80 years old or older. That's what you need. So first started working. You already knew that you needed to start planning and saving for retirement. So most of us started saving 30, 40 years prior to when you plan to retire. And you most likely employed the expertise of a financial advisor to calculate how much you would need for retirement and how long it would last, how long it would last to ensure that you don't outlive your savings. So if you started saving $250 per month from when you were 35, you will have about $320,000 if you retire at age 67. So yes, 32 years. When you first considered buying a home, you probably employed the expertise of a licensed realtor and mortgage broker to calculate how much you would need for a down payment, closing costs, commissions, and more. You determined how much house you could afford based on your income and mortgage payments, real estate taxes, PMI, homeowners insurance, home association dues, and you started saving the amount for your down payment, typically 5 to 7 years in advance, with the average down payment of 7%, according to the National Association of Realtors. You would need $22,400 for a down payment on a $320,000 home, which will mean about $375 a month saved over 5 years. And your monthly payment is $833 over 30 years. Now, let's consider the same $320,000 you need to pay for your student to attend an elite institution. What do you currently have put aside? So let's take that and subtract it from your $320,000. Let's talk about the worst case scenario, which is you don't have anything put aside. What would you need to do to prepare to pay approximately $7,000 a month over the next 4 years? So do you see how important it is in putting together a plan now? So this is how this system works. Really important fact you need to know is the financial aid department goal is to protect the assets of the college and give away as little money as possible. Let's face it, your job, our job, is to use the rules of financial aid to make your contribution to the college as small as possible. As you can see, the objectives are in direct opposition to those of the school. So how are you going to pay your portion? As I previously mentioned, this is a juggling act, but how are you expected to pay for college? There's really only 5 ways to pay for college. Number 1, pay with your earnings or income. This means that you'll need to examine your budget in advance to determine how much from your pay you can devote monthly. Where are you going to find that money? You can take it out of cash or your investment or your piggy bank. Bad part about this is that the disbursement will show up on your tax return and artificially raise your adjusted gross income for that year, which will raise your student aid index. But if you do this before the base year and put it in an account that's out of the financial aid formula, it's a win-win. You can use your home equity to pay for college. Just so you know, many top universities will add your equity when determining your contribution anyways. Again, this is going to artificially raise your adjusted gross income and in turn your student aid index. But if you do this before your base year and put it in an account that's out of the financial aid formula, we have a win-win. Loans. Now, I always like to talk about this because sometimes loans can be an option for a portion. Not for the whole thing. Your student is eligible for student loans each year, but only $5,500 the freshman year, $6,500 sophomore year, and $7,500 junior and senior year. Not even close to coming to pay for the cost of attendance. And retirement. Now, we list this as a way to pay because there's always someone that comes up to us afterwards to ask, hey, my financial advisor told me that I can take a loan against my retirement or get a disbursement without any penalties. That's correct. However, you have to keep in mind that now you're depleting your retirement account. And I've heard many times you can borrow for college, but you can't borrow for retirement. Try to get a loan to pay for your retirement bills. And of course, you probably want scholarships and grants. I have a feeling that's partially why you're here. For scholarships, again, your student needs to be preparing and spending their 4 years in high school, positioning themselves to be eligible. It's not something you can come to us when your student is a rising senior. And an extra tip, gift from relatives. So it's all about being an informed buyer. So let's pretend you have a relative that intends on helping you pay for college. A couple things to keep in consideration. If the money is gifted to your student, it is considered a student asset, which is assessed at 20 to 25%. If your relative sends the money to the school is going to thank them emphatically, hold a party in their name, turn to you and ask for your portion. It will not count as money. It will not count as money to pay your portion. It actually is going to reduce the amount of financial aid you're going to receive. But if your relative gives you the money to you, you deposit into one of your accounts, and then you write the check, the money is now being used to cover your portion of the costs. Here's an extra tip. If your student will be taking out student loans, wait until after college, gift and use that to pay for the student loans. So we talked about one of the reasons people families don't apply for financial aid is that you believe that your income is too high. Well, what if that actually is the case? You make too much money. Well, there's a couple of things you need to know about that. There are strategies and solutions for that too. So you still need to have a plan on how you're going to pay for college. So with some inventive strategies and planning, you can make your money work for you to provide you with funds for college. So this is going to require a full cash flow and financial analysis. So some of the areas where you can take advantage of the financial aid rules are savings, cash flow, income and asset planning, several strategies that apply to business owners. If you're a business owner, well, I could probably talk 2 hours just for business owners. Tax planning and tax credits, we could probably talk for 2 hours about that. And loans. Sometimes, as I mentioned, loans does come in handy. As long as it's legal, moral, ethical, and it can fit into the family's long-term strategies, it may make some sense to look at these options as well. Just because you make decent money doesn't mean you're out of the world of getting help for college. We just may be looking at different strategies from different direction. But the cumulative benefit of implementing a variety of strategies can often yield a greater real savings to your family on the total out-of-pocket college costs than can financial aid. And these strategies are more predictable ahead of time and under your control. as opposed to being controlled by the school with respect to financial aid. Okay, wait, we have been focusing on the cost of undergraduate education for only one child. Remember, there are other things that we have to consider. So, is your student interested in pursuing a master's degree or an MBA or a JD or an MD? Well, that's another 2 to 4 years with little to no need-based assistance other than loads. Add that. Do you have more than one student? Well, while you're planning, you need to factor in funds for their college too. And once upon a time, we were taught to have enough money to cover 3 months' salary in case of an emergency, such as a pandemic. And you want to make sure that you're also covered for short-term and long-term care. And this is all while still planning for retirement, because the life expectancy increased dramatically, 1% each and every year. So we need to plan to have enough money to support ourselves. You want to make sure that you have enough retirement funds to support you until you're 80 or older. Good example is my mom. Next month, she is going to be 99, going on 12. Anyways, you want to make sure that you have the security of being prepared for unforeseen circumstances. And this is exactly our expertise, to make sure that you can pay for everything. Okay, so what are the next steps? Phew. So ask yourself, what's important to your family? We found parents look at the process with concern. Sure, you want children to be independent, happy, and successful. Many of you are on the assumption that if your child doesn't get into the right college, that they won't be able to succeed. So finding a college can take on a special meaning. Of course, what parent doesn't want their child to get lots of scholarships? And you may have said to your child, you know what? You do the work, we'll figure out how to pay for it. And then they had the audacity to listen to you and get accepted into a top school. So now reality is starting to sink in, and you may be rethinking that promise. And you like to keep your promise without sacrificing a retirement. So you may not always be saying it, but what you really want is help. And you might ask, couldn't we just do this ourselves? Absolutely. Just so long as you're willing to become an expert on the admissions process and its impact on financial aid, as well as the thousands of pages of rules and regulations required to take full advantage of the process. You know, each family is unique, and it takes an experienced financial aid specialist to know how to advise you. So you don't have to come to us, but you want a financial aid specialist will help you determine how much the schools will expect you to pay, how to lower that cost, and then how to put together a plan to pay your portion. And you should have your plan on how to pay in place by the time your students are freshmen, and your students should start preparing by their freshman year also. Because I always say, hope is not a plan. It does not pay the bills. Planning and preparation pays the bills. And when hope fails, debt happens. So no matter what you do, you need to answer the following questions. 1, what are you going to be expected to pay for college, your student aid index? Number 2, how can you lower your out-of-pocket costs? Number 3, what plan do you have to pay for those costs? And number 4, what are the right schools for my student based on the right reasons and at the right price? Okay, so I've given you a lot of information. Your head might be ready to implode right now. But if you want to see if this is something that might apply to you and you're interested, if maybe we can help you through the process, absolutely schedule your initial consultation. You're just going on the survey, you're just going to check yes to that. We do have a few rules. First of all, if you're married, we respectfully insist that both parents must attend the meeting. Don't ask our staff to make an exception because they're going to tell you no. Our consultations are typically $297, but if you schedule your appointment by Monday, we will waive the consultation fee and it's complimentary. And if you can schedule it in the next few weeks, you need to call us and have your appointment on the calendar by Monday, but you can schedule it to come in within the next few weeks. So that really gives you about 4 weeks to meet with us. And if it's important to you, we'll make it important to us, and our staff will do everything possible to accommodate you. And you can reach us by calling the office at 833-473-3631 between 10 and 6. And you can also book on our website, but it's easier to call our office. We have faster access to our calendar. Okay. So one more, I'm going to finish with a rhetorical question. Which do you choose, to be an informed or uninformed buyer? Here's a look at some of, whoops, sorry, I went too fast on that one. Just so you can see. I'm trying to get to our slide that shows you are informed and uninformed. Okay, so I'm opening up the floor. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you very much for listening.